Welcome back to the Aro Benaiah Show, the podcast where we highlight the stories of trade people, entrepreneurs, and builders who inspire us with their grit, resilience, and wisdom. Today, I'm honored to be joined by John David Graham, founder of Good Samaritan Home, an award-winning author and someone whose journey from homelessness to business owner and community leader show what second chance can really do. His debut novel, Running as Fast as I Can, has won over 30 awards. But even more powerful is the way he's changing life by helping people restart after prison. John, is a privilege to have you on the show.
I'm glad to be here. I've not talked to somebody from Nigeria yet.
Wow, amazing! I feel more like honored to be
You're
the
the
first person to interview you from Nigeria. Yeah, thank you. So, John, what was it like growing up for you?
Well, I grew up in the mill towns around Pittsburgh, so working class neighborhood, and it was the sort of you expect to go into the mill, you expect to have that sort of career, and I left early on because our family was what I call growing up alone together. So we lived in the same house, but we were strangers together. So I spent the rest of my life without any direction for the next 30 years because I didn't have that background. And I was 53 years old after 8 different careers. I had been a children's home counselor. I had been a fireman. I had been a building contractor. I was a journalist. I was even a minister at one point, and I didn't do very well in all of those things until I was 53 years old, and my wife and I found the oldest house in town because we couldn't afford anything, and we started remodeling in that to open it for people who were homeless, people who had gone through worse things than I had gone through. And the Department of Correction asked us if we could take people coming from prison. And in doing that, it opened up a whole new world for us.
Wow.
And since then, we helped 2,500 men and women restart their lives after prison. So I found my career, I found my place in helping people who were looking for their place.
Wow, amazing. This is really, really inspiring. Were there any influences from family, mentor, or community that shape your view of hard work and resilience?
Well, the thing, community was very strong in the past, but community is not nearly as strong today. Television was a factor growing up, but today it's social media, and you're getting things. The very fact that you and I are talking together from different continents, and that's a good thing. The bad thing is that it used to be that the community would help raise you and keep you in line. There was a saying that it takes a community to raise a child. It's actually true, but unfortunately we don't do it. My situation of growing up alone, I think, is very common today among all classes because of social media. You can do this. This is your next best friend on the phone, and that friend is not really your friend. So I think the influences today are far, far greater than what I had growing up.
Wow. Amazing. So when you look back, did you actually view yourself as being an author and a community leader?
When I was young, 25 years old, ironically, I was homeless at that time, living in my truck. And I wanted to be an author because I wanted to write a book, but I had no background, no training, and of course, without a job, they repossessed my truck. That was my plans for a book were put on hold for 50 years.
Oh,
I didn't start writing that book until I was 65, and I didn't publish it until I was 75. And here's the reason. Wanting to write a book and have my detours, it took all of my mistakes. It took all of the things I thought were the wrong direction to actually give me the story. And now the book is about second chances. It's like, I call it a Forrest Gump story, where you go down this path through all these different adventures, trying to find families, what you're trying to find. And that was my situation. And the story has been very well received because I think a lot of people are looking for where they fit.
Yeah. I think it basically resonates with a whole lot of persons growing up where they don't have community of people and having to do a whole lot of couples of things juggle all around for them to actually find themselves and do what they do. I think it resonates a whole lot of persons. Definitely, I'm going to kind of agree to read the book. So you have had so many jobs from sales to truck driver, fireman, teacher, counselor, contractor, like minister, a whole lot of them. So which of these particular roles actually left the deepest mark in you?
Well, that's a very good question, because the trouble with having a little education is you begin to think that you're better equipped. And I remember filling out a resume to act as a teacher for the Methodist Church in, I think it was Africa, in fact. And they asked what I was qualified to teach, and I said anything. And what I meant was I'm willing to teach. And what it came across was that I'm qualified to teach. And that was probably half the problem, is that we grew up thinking if you just had an education in college, then all these doors would open. But there's a lot of hard work that goes in after you get your education. So that's why I went into these careers thinking I was smarter and better than I was. And I made a lot of mistakes. Ironically, that helped me deal with people who are coming out of prison who have made mistakes much more serious, but it's still the same mindset of making mistakes and wanting to start over. That's actually helped me identify with these men and women that otherwise I couldn't.
Wow, that is amazing. I'm just imagining the depth of the hardship and the demand it plays on you, being that you're not aware of what that situation, the job role actually entails, until you go to discover it and discover that, wow, this is really a whole lot. And the fact that we're still able to work system around it to make it better. And I think it's really, really painful most times, owing to the ups and downs that come with it, being that you're educated, you expect that you can do everything, not knowing that there's a whole level of hard work that needs to be put in it before that particular stuff actually work out or the desired results.
I think there's a tendency, particularly in the West, to think of ourselves as having answers for the world. There's an arrogance in the West, and there's an arrogance in the church, where we assume because we think we have the right doctrines, we have the answers for the world. Instead of being the servants, in effect, we want to become the teachers and the leaders. And what I've learned through my mistakes and through my failures is how better to serve, which I think is a missing element, not just in the church, but in all of the Western philosophy. Being quite candid, I'm embarrassed by much that the West does towards the rest of the world, because, like I say, there's this arrogance. My work today, people ask me, how can I work with somebody who's committed murder and has spent 30 years in prison? Because I truly say, there but for the grace of God, go I. Because I've done different things, I've made different mistakes, but they're still as damaging. I have hurt many people with my mistakes. So maybe I'm trying to undo my sins in a small way, and I can't change the world, but maybe I can change my corner of it, and I can do my part to make a difference in some way.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think the fact that you make reference of service, it just reminds me of particular creed that service to humanity is the best work of life. And what you just said just speaks volumes to it. I think in helping people, sometimes it's being that you have seen your weakness owing to those various experiences you already had, make it to be able to relate with them, to being that you just figure it out that all of us, we are in saints. At one point, we get it wrong too. We just get to pick ourselves up and actually work on things we work on. And the fact that if we extend that helping hands to our co-neighbors who are passing through some demanding, coming down from prison, we will see the various way we are going to help them, rather than criticizing them and not seeing the way they could actually more like outdo much in the world. Yeah, thank you so much for that. Yeah. So what was there a point in those early jobs where you realized you wanted to dedicate yourself to helping people?
I was building houses in Texas, and I was doing well and making a good living at it, but it bothered me to see the disparity, because I was building $1 million and $2 million houses. And I thought there's nothing wrong with spending your money on your house, but I just felt like we have such a limited time on earth. It bothered me that I was participating in what I call a disparity. And I don't mean that you should take money from the rich, but I believe we have an obligation to help uplift the poor. So that's when I went back to school to become a minister, thinking that I could help the community better than building houses for $1 million. But to be quite candid, the church many times can be very conservative and very political and very closed-minded. And so I tried to reach out to those same poor people, and the church oftentimes closed ranks. When I would try to help a homeless person, sometimes the church would tell me they're not members. And I was embarrassed by some of the responses in the church. And I believe that the church has a higher obligation than the person in the community, because we say we believe more. We say we have a higher calling, so we have a higher responsibility. And so I left the church as a minister and took the church into the street, and that's why we started Good Samaritan Home.
Wow, amazing, amazing. I'm just imagining the level of hard work you actually get to do before you actually more like, I'll take the church from to down to the street. It's such a whole level of work. Being that, wow, I must really say I'm really, really inspired by you actually more like doing this, and I know my audience will be inspired too. Yeah, thank you so much. And you have spoken about experiencing homelessness. Or what did the season of your life, what did that season of your, how does it actually more like shape your view about what you do today? And
I didn't live on the street for any great length of time like many people, but I was in my truck with no place to live, and I remember looking for a place to park it, and I remember having somebody come up and knocking on my door saying, "Get out of here, you're in my parking lot." And I remember looking at the weather saying, "Where will I sleep tonight?" And then when they repossessed my truck, I literally was without any shelter. And luckily, I was able to move in with a friend, and we call that couch surfing. But it's still was when somebody says just get a job, that's very hard to do for some of us, because it's not just getting a job, but it's getting a job you can do and getting a job that fits whatever skills you have. So I was able, even when I was with a family and fairly successful, the pressure to go back into homelessness. When I left the church, technically we were near homeless again because we were in church housing. So we fortunately could buy the oldest, cheapest house in town. That's what we used as our shelter. But we were near homeless at that time. So what it taught me was that in our program, I'm very careful to tell somebody they have to leave, even though they aren't behaving or even though they're not following the rules. I try to give somebody a second and a third and a fourth chance, because I know what homelessness can be like in the winter. It can be killer.
yeah,
I have a personal investment in the concept of homelessness.
wow, wow, amazing. I think that was even the second question I actually want to share. That can you share one or two turning points that made you believe second chance, both for yourself and for others?
Well, I talked about me, but let me tell you about Jimmy.
Yeah,
Jimmy had mental health issues. So he was in and out of jail, in and out of hospitals, because he was schizophrenic. And he had been a veteran, so the VA hospital, the Veterans Hospital, would often help him if he would show up. But one day when he was 67 years old, they found him in his truck, and it was broken down, and it was in January, it was below freezing, and he was dying. And so the Veterans Hospital called us and said, "Can you take him into your shelter?" Now, technically, he was only supposed to stay for 90 days, but he stayed for 6 months, and then a year, and 2 years. And then he began, because he had a limited veteran's income, he stayed with us, and for a few $100s a month, just a portion of what it would cost, he stayed with us for 14 years.
wow,
And here's what Jimmy said, because he died from cancer when he was 81 years old. After 14 years with us, he said, "This was the only home I ever had." That to me
wow,
is worth it right there.
wow, amazing, wow, amazing. That was really, really amazing, and a whole lot of lessons to actually learn from that. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. You have often described Carlos's hands and a tender heart. How did this prayer actually more like come to start?
It's very easy to say, here's $10, here's $100, donate, so you don't really get involved. You can have you can feel like you're helping somebody, but you're not really involved with somebody. But where I feel most comfortable, ironically, is in conversations with some of our residents, where you simply say, "Tell me about your family." And where my wife really picks up is he asked about their grandmothers. What was it like growing up? And invariably, they'll come back and say, my mother and father were here, but my grandmother was the one. And it's in those personal conversations. That's where you develop I believe, the tender heart. The calloused hands come from knowing that no matter what you do, you're not going to succeed with everybody, but at least you've watered, you've offered something. You may not be there for the harvest, but you've been part of the growing process. It took me 30 years. So why should it take somebody else less?
Wow, amazing. No matter what you do. Wow. That quote was really, really very, very you can't actually get to please everybody, and it's you just helping the happy hands and doing your own part. That really, really speaks volumes, because I know definitely a whole lot of persons struggle with getting along with people today, and the fact that it might be a big burden to them, but just hearing this quote is so liberating, being that they could actually see light from that particular perspective. Thank you so much, John. Yeah. Okay, what inspired you to create Good Samaritan Home, actually holistically, and what vision did you actually have from the start?
Well, I think you flatter me by saying I had a vision. I started off saying, if we can help one person doing one thing, and we started off with just sharing our own house with one person who was referred to us by the prison chaplain. And that one house led to another person and then another person. And we were able to get a grant, and we were able to get a second house. So the vision was something we grew into. Because right now we have 21 houses.
Wow.
And on any given day, we have 90 men and women in our houses. I never envisioned that. And even if somebody told me that, I would not have been able to handle it. I couldn't see me doing that. It would have frightened me. So it took us 25 years to reach this point.
Wow. Amazing. This is really, really inspiring, because I think this just speaks volumes to the fact that sometimes we might not get to kind of picture holistically what we're actually doing is all about. I think the first thing is getting started, because there's a whole lot of possibility that can be unraveled from getting started. Having an audience of one compared to we saying that let's get the vision clear first, how big it's going to be before we actually more like get in. I think this story of yours just speaks volumes. Yeah, if it is all about helping, help one, and as you keep doing that one, the idea of how to do 2 and 3 and subsequently how to enlarge is going to kind of be embedded owing to the process, not just in isolation. Thank you so much, John. So what was the hardest obstacle you faced in getting Good Samaritan Home off the ground?
I thought when we offered to take one man into our house that the community would say, that's a good thing. They didn't. They passed a petition around, got all the neighbors upset, went to the city council, got the city leaders upset. They made threats. They made a lot of angry statements. There were lawsuits. There were threats against my life at one point, and it was very, very difficult for several years. And in fact, what we had to do was we had to be an example. I thought of Bishop Tutu in South Africa, how he responded to apartheid, and the consequences of apartheid is sometimes justice is not getting vengeance. It's getting the truth out there. And sometimes it's by not what you say, but it's how you live. We tried not to respond to the hatred. In fact, in the winter, we made sure to clean everybody's sidewalk on the block, and we never said a word, but we just were a good neighbor. Eventually, and it took years, those people who were critical of us, who were angry with us, now looked on us as a member of the community. And one by one, the neighborhood has actually improved, and people fixed up their houses as well. So we've been I call it a quiet response to their anger.
Wow, amazing. Such a lovely way of actually getting to do it. And the fact that you said justice sometimes it's not about what you say, but how you live. I think it really speaks volume, because sometimes the weight of our world is hanging on how we actually live. And the fact that you make reference of how we live sometimes speaks volume to how justice can be able to kind of put into place compared to we just trying to prove our point right. And this is really amazing. Yeah, I'm glad that the community get to kind of came to in terms with you guys and they were able to recognize what you guys are doing. And the way you handle it is really, really amazing. Could you share more like a success story from Good Samaritan Home that still motivate you today, even when challenges arise?
We had a young man come to us. He was 16 years old when he was in prison, and he spent 9 years. So he came out, he was from Washington, D.C., a big city, and he was arrested in Cincinnati, Ohio, which is near us, and again, a big city. And he came to our town where we're located is smaller, much smaller, and it's predominantly white. And he was a young black man who had been spent 1/3 of his life in prison. And he came to us because his grandmother said, "You go to those people." And he did. And so Walter stayed with us, not just initially for us 3 months, but he went to one of our rental apartments and stayed for another year. And then he stayed in contact with us. And just last year, we hired him to be part of our staff. So now he works full time at another job and he works part time as a manager for Good Samaritan Home.
Amazing. This is really amazing. I'm just wondering what the young man would have turned up to if not for the support and the mentorship and the counseling you guys actually put in place. This is really inspiring and really amazing. So for someone starting over after prison, what is usually the biggest barrier they face?
What happens, studies have shown that the biggest barrier is housing. And when you're released from prison, you're given what they call gate money. That's enough money for a bus, and you're sent back to where you came from. You're homeless, technically. So our program is to fill that void. But even housing is not enough. If I were to say to you, get a job, but you've never had a job, what would you do? An example, you've been locked up. How would you look for a job on an iPhone?
Yeah.
That's like it's like speaking a foreign language, as you well understand. By the way, you do very well with English.
Well, thank you so much.
It's not your native tongue, is it?
No. It's
That's right. See, that's my point, is that you've had to learn, and that's not easy. And getting a job and getting into normal life is like a foreign language. And so we have to support one another. So what the local county government does, they have what they call a reentry training, and they actually have a program teaching you how to apply for a job. When after 8 weeks of these classes, you get a certificate that says you have graduated and you are prepared, and they will help you find a job, but they even give you a new suit. And there's something about seeing a grown man with an award and a new suit. I've seen grown men cry over they're just so proud of themselves. And that, that's a very, very basic thing. Getting a job or even going to apply for a job. But it's like teaching people to walk. It's one step at a time, one small step.
wow. Amazing. So for many of my listeners are trade people just beginning their career from your perspective, what mistake do young people make when building their future?
Well, I think the lessons apply to anything, not just people like
Yeah.
that we deal with,
Yeah.
is that we like to think, particularly in this Facebook age, where you see people who are young, 20 years old, and driving fancy cars, and they look like they have perfect lives and big houses. And I call it running a sprint. We like to think that you go immediately to success, but I have found in my life as a perfect example that life is filled with detours and we fall down many times, but it's a marathon as long as we get up and keep running. So you start with a small job, start with a beginner job, you come to work on time, you work hard, you get a small promotion, then you get another promotion. If people see you as a good worker, they will ask you to be a good leader. And that takes time. And getting an education can come on the job. But the trick is, my wife was 60 years old when she got her college degree. It took her 28 years to do it because she told all of her life that you're not smart enough. And it took a whole lifetime for her to get the confidence to do that. So if she could do it, and if I could do it, then you could do it. But
Yeah.
it's a marathon.
Yeah. Amazing. Oh, wow. I'm just wondering the resilience the energy mom has to put into it to get the college degree. That must be much energy, and I really admire the. Yeah, that was really really amazing. And from the illustration you make, that's yeah, more like life is more like a marathon. There's a whole lot going to be a lot of ups and downs, running, falling, and standing up. We speak volume to the fact that when we understand it from this particular paradigm, it actually more like instinct patience in us in what we are doing, or not just be more of I just want to get to this final point. Whereas not seeing that, yeah, life does not work that very way. There's going to be the period of where things go very well. Sometimes it don't go very well. You just have to pick yourself up. And those jobs you're making reference of the promotion here and there is more like a baton for the particular race you have run, which keep going on and on once you are doing better. And this illustration of yours really speak volumes to how the young persons ought to handle life so that they won't find themselves committing crime or in a way of just bypassing the various routes instead of passing the normal route of actually more like climbing the ladder a step at a time. Yeah, thank you so much, John. Thank you. Yeah. What habit or attitude do you believe separate those who succeed from those who give up too soon?
It's again, let's come back to this idea of why didn't my lottery ticket come through, or why didn't that job come through? I had one of our fellows who was struggling to pay his bills, and so he applied for a promotion, and he was a good worker, and he wanted very much to get that promotion, and he was told that he was next in line. And he didn't get it. And it's very easy to get discouraged, but he didn't quit. What he did was we sat down and said, okay, how can we redo your budget so that we can help you buy time, and can you get some overtime work? And so that's what he's doing now. He's getting extra income by working more hours. So what he did was he took a rejection and turned it into an avenue to be successful. And that just sometimes it takes just simple hard work.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. Turning more like the failures, those doesn't work out very well to success. I think it's really, really speak volume because most time when I read histories of those who do outstanding in the world, who do something that's more like a break ground, a whole lot of them encounter a whole lot of failures. And the turning point for them was despite those failures they encountered, despite the setback, they were still able to pick themselves up and do even much harder work owing to that failure. And owing to that, they surpassed a whole lot of limitation that was predominant during this particular period. And what you just said just speak volume to it that it might demand a level of higher work for us when failure comes into being, but we shouldn't actually give up and actually leave ourselves down there when we fall. And this really speaks volume to it. Thank you so much, John. So in your view, what responsibility do older, more experienced trade people and leaders have towards the younger generation?
Very good question, because we have a tendency here. For example, I'll do a video and it'll go on TikTok, and videos on TikTok are very fast.
Yeah.
And so people my age may not watch TikTok, and and Facebook may be slower. So I can talk more slowly there. And what I'd like to see us do is take the people from Facebook talking to the people on TikTok, because we can help one another. We can learn to listen to one another. That goes back to the community question. Because I'm 77 years old,
Whoa.
that doesn't mean I can't talk to somebody who's 21 years old. And that doesn't mean they can't talk to me, because I have been through things that they're about to go through. And if I can help them know where to avoid the potholes, then maybe they won't make the same mistakes. But we have to do it together. It's like if we lean on one another, we can support one another. But if we try to put young and old separate, then we're going to repeat the same mistakes every generation.
So true, so true, so true. I think this is really, really very key in terms of, I think it's easier for the young generation to navigate their path through life if they only listen to the older ones, being that they have years of experience, they have years of failures and success too, and going to their experience, they could actually more like make reference of some certain things that actually learn them to. That is the reason why sometimes I actually love history, being that history revealed the fact that a whole lot of people, what mistake they did and what they would have done different if if they actually more like have that same opportunity. And I think having the older generation around really speak volume to this, which boil down to the point you make that if both of them can actually listen to what the older ones have to say, so that the younger ones can actually learn what and what they could do different, so that they won't make similar mistake that the older ones make. Yeah, this will really be profound in terms of gaining mentorship, in terms of not having to kind of pass through a whole lot of routes that the young generation, some of the route that the older generation passed through, which didn't really yield more results. If only the younger ones are willing to listen. I think listening actually speak volume to what is being
That's right.
needed. Yeah, thank you.
If we're willing to listen, and if we're willing to talk with them, not
Yes.
talk at.
Thank you with them. Thank you so much. I think this is very, very key too, because when you talk at them, it hurts their egos and pride, and sometimes they wouldn't want to listen. And talking with them actually more like, yes, make them to be willing to listen, and it doesn't bruise their ego. At the same time, it reveals to them their weakness, and they really want to listen. Yeah, thank you so much, John. So your book, Running as Fast as I Can, has been called Everyone's Stories. What message do you hope people carry away after reading it?
Well, what happened was when I talk about things like what I call it, the data about second chances, nobody hears me. So I wrote a story about second chances through a character. I call him a Forrest Gump type character who lived through the 60s, and he went through the same struggles we're talking about. And I want people to read the story and to feel what it means to get a second chance. Because so many of us, here, a good example, the movie Titanic is very emotional, but really what it's about is make sure you check the lifeboats. Yeah, book about lifeboats. So what they did was, and nobody watched that. So what they did was they made it into an emotional love story. And so today we still look at Jack and Rose and get all misty-eyed. Running as fast as I can is a story about second chances, but it's about Daniel and Kate. And it's their love story of second chances. I've had hundreds of people write to me and say, I couldn't stop reading it. I couldn't stop turning I cried with Daniel. That's what I want.
Wow, amazing. If the fact that you're able to kind of tell it, the fact that they were not willing to listen to you at first, and the fact that you're able to kind of put it in a different way that make people want to read it, and now it actually bless them a whole lot. That's really amazing, I must say. Yeah, thank you so much, John. So after being rejected 200 times by publisher, what gave you the strength to keep trying until you finally succeed?
I think it comes down to this whole concept of a marathon, because there's really no money in publishing because most books don't sell that well.
Yeah.
You think there's a million books out there, but most of them sell only 200 or 500 copies. So my object was not to make money. My object was to get people reading and talking. It got to the point where I got so many rejections because I'm not a young, handsome guy from New York. I'm not what I call a hard body. And they didn't look at me like I was good looking enough to be on a magazine. So I couldn't get these New York agents to look at my story. And I began to think that maybe it's not a good story. And I had to back up and I had to reread it and say, is it the story I wanted? Is it well done? Is it my best effort? And then I hooked up with a company called Don Quixote Press. It's called an independent publisher. And it's an outsider press for outsider writers like me.
Wow.
And together we have been promoting the book. And since we started a year ago, we have had 20,000 people buy the book, which to me is very, very successful.
Wow.
But it's the readers that have said, I couldn't get enough of the story. So
Amazing.
again, don't quit running.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think the application of seeing life as a marathon really just more like when I say bust all the bubbles, or more of a relief to every circumstance one get to encounter during this journey called life. Being that at every point in time, you just viewing it as a marathon, give you this such a relief that, yeah, I'm still part of the game. It's just that this particular phase of it now, it might demand me doing a whole lot of job owing to the failure that is being encountered, or more like getting more of the reward owing to I just be passed another button. And just viewing it this very way just give you a sense of relief and the fact that knowing that this too will come to pass which is really very profound way of looking at life. I must say thank you for that. So how did you feel to see your work win over 30 award after so many setbacks?
We've actually total number of awards is now 41 awards, and that says that makes me feel like the story has earned respect from the critics.
Yeah.
And that makes me feel very good, because I thought I was a bad writer for a while because of the rejection. And then I realized that I'm actually a good writer.
Yeah.
But then, like I say, what really means the most was Sue Hartman wrote me from Oregon, and she said, I couldn't stop reading. It was the best book I ever read. And her response is what matters more than the critics, because it's the readers that
Yeah.
matter.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So, John, if you could sit down with a younger self before all the jobs, struggles, and accomplishments, what wisdom will you pass on?
I would say be more teachable.
How?
I had more answers than I had questions, and I was giving people answers for questions they weren't asking.
Wow.
Part of that was the arrogance of the 60s. Remember there was a statement, don't trust anyone over 30?
Yeah.
We unfortunately, that created a generational, not just a block, but it created a detour that we went down the wrong road for many, many years as a generation. And I believe that my generation is responsible for many of the problems that we're facing today, because we were unteachable. I would say to my younger self, just shut up and listen.
I think this really speaks volume, because the fact that you said being teachable just speaks volume. I think that's the reason why we actually like children many times, because they actually want answers. They don't have a lot of answers compared to, when you have a lot of answers, there's tendency to have pride and to be arrogant, and to willing to do things without even thinking about what is going to be the outcome of this particular things I'm actually more like looking forward to. But the fact that you make reference of being teachable just speak volume to the fact that, yes, ask a lot of questions. Don't think you have it figured out. Ask and listen. Being teachable. Being teachable simply means be asking. Don't just say, I know it all, because that is going to definitely land one into some kind of mistake that take years to erase, and those pain might linger all through one lifetime. And I must say, hearing from you again, it really speaks volume. Yeah, thank you so much. What opportunity exists today in trade, entrepreneurship, second chance career that people often overlook?
I think there's been a shift. I grew up thinking if you just went to college, that you could get a successful career, a good paying job. But I would like to see a revival of the trades, the construction trades. I think there can be a real second chance in being a plumber. There's a real
Yeah.
carpenter. I think when I was working in Texas, we always said, you can tell who the boss is because he's wearing a white shirt. And we all wanted to wear the white shirt. But there was a great deal of pride in being on the ground doing the actual work. And you see the house behind me, I did all the work on this myself.
Wow.
And I
It's
learned that
really
in the trade.
amazing.
So there's a great deal of pride in that. So I would say take pride, like Dr. King would say, if you are a street sweeper, then you be the best street sweeper in the world. So when they walk down your street, they'll say, there lives the world's greatest sweeper. That's the second chance career is wherever you are, be your best.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much. So do you believe society is getting better by giving people second chance, or is it still a long way to go?
I would say we've gone backwards. The current political climate is one of anger, fear. We've turned xenophobia. We've turned inward, and it's not just in America. I'd say it's happening around the world. Irony is that America was founded on this principle of second chances. People came from Europe. They came from Asia. They came from Africa. They came to start over here. And we knew if we could get to America and work hard, then our children would have a better opportunity than we had. And now we've gone backwards. And the irony is it's contrary to everything we believe politically and spiritually. The good news is I believe it's a blip. I believe we're going to come back again. It's not linear. I believe it's circular. I think we will come back, but it's going to be painful and it's going to be costly. because it's very easy when our leadership is pointing fingers. It's easy for the people to point fingers. That's why I believe there are so many violent events going on, because people are they're afraid and they're angry and they're blaming the other person.
Yeah.
And that does worry me greatly.
Yeah, thank you so much. If there's going to be more like a final words you are going to leave to my audience who love to read your book, who love to follow you and everything, what is going to be your final words to them? More like the word of encouragement, or more like just a quote, a lesson that you want to leave with them?
I would say if your audience is worldwide, I would say what you're seeing from America is not all of America. I think it's only the loud, brash part of America. It's the fearful part. But there are some of us who really do care and we want to make a difference. And I would say forgive us, and we will try to work together further, because we are all children of God. We are all brothers and sisters. And sometimes we just need to be reminded of that.
Thank you so much. It has really been an amazing moment having these conversations with you, and I learned a whole lot, being teachable, seeing life as a marathon, because sometimes when we see it as a sprint, we think it's a game of competition, other than seeing it as a marathon. Yeah, it's really amazing having that particular view, and I must say it has really been amazing. So if my audience want to connect with you, which platform should they reach out to?
Easiest thing to do is go to my website, johndavidgraham.com, and that will link you to Good Samaritan Home, or it'll link you to my book page, but it'll also link you to some background, things we've talked about. That's John David Graham.
Thanks for sharing your story and insight with us. Your journey is a powerful reminder that no matter how many twists and setbacks we face, there is always room for growth and second chance and new beginning. For everyone listening, I encourage you to check out John award-winning novel, Running as Fast as I Can, on Amazon, and learn more about life-changing work at Good Samaritan Home. This is the Aro Benaiah Show. Until next time, keep building, keep believing, and keep going. Yeah, thank you, John. It's good to have you on the show.
Thank you.